They have an impact, they'll have an effect, and we need everything we can get. I think we're going to be very good with the coronavirus. I think that at some point that's going to sort of just disappear, I hope. It will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better. Something I don't like saying about things, but that's the way it is.
This week notable for a shift in the president's public tone when it comes to the coronavirus. And the shift comes as we've seen cases rising significantly over the last month in states like Florida, Texas, and California. And while the number of cases has been soaring, the number of deaths in these states has so far not reached the horrific heights seen in New York back in April. Will things get worse in states like Florida? Have they stabilized? Has our ability to save lives among those infected improved since the early days of this outbreak? Joining me now, Dennis Carroll, the current chair of the Global Virome Project Leadership Board and the former director of USAID's Pandemic, Influenza, and Other Emerging Threats Unit. Dennis, thank you for joining me. I want to start with your sense of where things stand right now. I was taking a look at those rolling averages of new cases. We talk about Florida, California, Arizona, these states. It looks like potentially things might be plateauing, maybe have hit their peak. Is that your sense of it, or do you think these are gonna keep rising, these numbers of new cases?
Well, first off, thank you for a chance to be on your program, Steve. Look, what we're seeing, first and foremost, the dramatic rise in cases was a direct consequence of the premature relaxing of measures in May, and we saw with Memorial Day, dramatic sort of gatherings of populations on the beaches of Southern California and in Florida, and we're looking at the consequences of that now. Whether or not we're looking at a plateauing, it really has to do with whether now people are starting to take the measures that we know work very effectively. Are people beginning to wear the masks? Are they practicing appropriate social distancing? If they bring those measures to play, we will see a plateauing and we'll see a dramatic reduction in the number of cases. But ultimately, it comes down to, are these measures being adopted? And is there clarity in the guidance being given both at the governor's level and at the White House that these are the measures that, in fact, will not only stop the rise in cases, but dramatically reduce the number of people who will be infected as we go forward.
I got to ask you, you mentioned around Memorial Day, large public gatherings on beaches in Southern California. It was around Memorial Day you had large public gatherings in cities all across the country. Protests. Did that contribute to this?
Well, there's not clarity about to what extent the protest activities contributed. What we do know is that where we see the rise in cases right now is really closely associated with the kind of activities that took place over Memorial Day and weeks subsequent to that. So whether or not the protests had anything to do with the rise, it is not clear. There are a number of studies that have looked at participants in those protests to see to the extent that there was transmission occurring, and there appears to have been very little. But again, those studies are incomplete, and we have much more to learn.
We look at the situations in Florida. The other thing I mentioned there in the introduction is the death rate. I was looking, the worst day in New York, when this was raging back in April, it was about 764 people in a single day died in New York. Taking a look down at Florida, which is slightly larger than New York population-wise, you've got this massive rise in cases, but you're still at, right now, I think about 110 people dying on a day. So about a seventh, a little more than less than a seventh, I should say, of what you had in New York. Is that number you think is going to rise dramatically, or does that reflect that we've learned some things about this disease, how to treat it, where the death rate now has been improved some?
Right. Well, first off, I think we are seeing the benefits of improved clinical practices. There was much learned during the first period of the epidemic in New York, and how to better manage those cases. New drugs have become available, and new clinical practices. We're seeing a dramatic rise in the numbers of people surviving going on respirators, and those all reflect changes in the kind of clinical practices that physicians are applying now. now. So the first events have clearly were devastating, but they provided critical insight in how patients can be better treated. The second is that when you look at the demographics of who's being affected, we're seeing a much younger population. Again, younger populations can be severely affected. They can both die and they can have severe cases, but they aren't as significant as people over the age of 60. So I think it's a combination of demographic exposures and the lessons learned from the first wave of the epidemic going through New York.
And I think that's the other question there, just you mentioning the younger demographic getting it. Of course, the concern there is, hey, younger people have contact with older people, have contact with more vulnerable people, so there's the possible means to spread it there. But when you look back at New York, obviously there's some attention paid to decisions that were made by the governor when it came to nursing homes in New York, when it came to taking COVID patients, putting them into nursing homes, and you had, I think it was about half the deaths in New York perhaps were attributable to nursing homes. Is that something where there's been progress since the early days? Have we learned better how to protect nursing homes? Is that a big reason why you're not seeing the scale of death in a state like Florida you saw in New York?
Well, we've certainly learned how to better protect people living in nursing homes. And to the extent that those lessons are being applied right now in Florida, for instance, I'm not really aware. But it's clear that that population is particularly vulnerable. But it's also clear that there are steps that can be taken. Again, learned from the experiences in New York that will protect those people living in nursing homes. So, right, one would hope that lessons from the first wave are being applied in clinical care and protecting the most vulnerable populations.
All right, Dennis Carroll, thank you very much. Really appreciated the conversation.
Thanks.
All right, and when we return, 20 questions with the Attorney General. As William Barr goes before Congress this week, he's going to face questions on everything from Michael Flynn to the commutation of Roger Stone's sentence to violent clashes between protesters in Portland and federal agents. Andrew Weissman joins me next.
It's all still out there. Say hello to the world again during Mazda's Rediscover the Road event. We have more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus models than any other car maker. Find your all-wheel drive Mazda CUV and get 0% APR for up to 60 months and no payments for 90 days.
Alright, so
I'll start.
Oh,
do you want to go first?
no, I don't. You go.
I was just going to be on slide 7, talking about bundling and saving. Jamie, you're cutting out.
Hey, whoever's doing that, can you go on mute?
Oh, my bad.
I was just saying there's a typo on slide 7. Bundle home and auto for big disco snouts. I think that's supposed to say discounts.
You sure about that?
Hey, can you guys see me?
Love Latisse? Now, with Rory, you can get authentic Latisse prescribed by a doctor online. If Latisse is right for you, we'll deliver it straight to your door with free 2-day shipping. Get the Latisse you love and more with Rory. Get started with your free online visit today at hellorory.com/TV. Download the free app now.
Experian Boost has helped millions of people. How can it help you?
Oh my gosh, 16 points! This is great!
I
refinanced my truck and saved a bunch of money.
So I just boosted my credit score 28 points.
Boost your credit scores instantly. Free. Download the Experian app now.
Introducing new Voltaren Arthritis Pain Gel, the first and only full prescription strength non-steroidal anti-inflammatory gel available over the counter. New Voltaren is powerful arthritis pain relief in a gel. Voltaren, the joy of movement.
Attorney General William Barr is set to testify before the House Judiciary Committee on Tuesday. The hearing is simply called, quote, Oversight of the Department of Justice. And that vague, broad title casts a potentially wide net over the large number of controversies the DOJ has been involved in recently, included but not limited to the presence of federal law enforcement in cities across the country, the ousting of the former U.S. Attorney in Manhattan, Jeffrey Berman, Barr's decision to drop all criminal charges against Michael Flynn, the president's former national security advisor who pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI, and, of course, the president's commuting of the sentence of his friend and confidant, Roger Stone, on 7 felony crimes. And joining me now is Andrew Weissman. He's the former general counsel for the FBI and a former senior member of the Mueller investigation team and an MSNBC legal analyst. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Let me start with this. A broad range of possibilities. You know how these congressional hearings work here. What do you expect to be covered this Tuesday?
Well, I think you gave a very good overview. I think all of the topics that you mentioned are going to be on the table here. And I think the trick for the Congress leaders who are doing the questioning, especially with a lawyer like Barr, is going to be the follow-ups. It's going to be really staying with him and pressing for concrete answers. But I would say one of the key topics, the umbrella, is going to be unequal justice. It's going to be this issue of favors for people like Flynn, Stone, Manafort, and are those same favors being given to everyone else? And I think that's a topic that I think most viewers can relate to, which is that you don't want to see the American system of justice have disproportionate advantages to people just because they know the president, and they're supposed to be treated the same way, regardless of whether they're friends of the president or whether they're disadvantaged youths from the inner city. And I think that Attorney General Barr is going to have a hard time answering those questions.
Now, Jerry Nadler, the Democrat who chairs this committee, we could play this. This is about a month ago. This is Nadler talking in his committee about the Attorney General. This is what he had to say.
Mr. Barr's work at the Department of Justice has nothing to do with correcting injustice. He is the president's fixer. He has shown us that there is one set of rules for the president's friends and another set of rules for the rest of us.
I think setting the stage there certainly for the tone that will be coming, at least from the Democratic side in these hearings. My question here is sort of on the specifics. We know these congressional hearings, they can have fireworks, they can be dramatic moments, there can be kind of intense verbal combat. Do you think there is specific information that Democrats can get out of these hearings?
Yeah, well, one of the things they could ask the Attorney General is, tell me specifically when you have intervened for anyone else other than Manafort, Flynn, and Stone. Who else have you sought to reduce the sentence other than those three? In what other cases have career prosecutors resigned? I think the other area is Jeff Berman and Jesse Liu, the U.S. attorneys in the Southern District of New York and in D.C. And in fact, the Attorney General was caught, the fancy word for it is lying, when he issued a press release saying that the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York had resigned. And a New York Minute later, Jeffrey Berman said, no, I haven't. So that, I think, is something where you can have a specific response from the Attorney General about what on God's green earth happened there and why were you seeking to have the removal so quickly.
We've seen the Attorney General in some of these hearings before. Obviously, he is a veteran of Washington, had this role actually back in the first Bush administration in the early 90s. How do you expect him to handle this hearing?
So, I once had a witness who was the underboss of the Gambino crime family, and one of the things he was caught saying was that when you go in the grand jury, you can sometimes tell the truth, but you kind of have to bob and weave, and every now and then you need to just flat out lie. And, I think in the past, what we've seen from the Attorney General, obviously I'm not saying that he is the underboss of the crime family, but you've seen him bob and weave and avoid answering questions. And that's why I do think that the challenge for the Democrats is going to be very specific follow-up questions, trying to force the Attorney General to answer.
All right, Andrew Weissman, MSNBC legal analyst, thank you for the time. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, you too. And when we return, the school attended by President Trump's son will not fully reopen in September, as the president calls for classrooms nationwide to open. With little guidance in many cases, teachers preparing for an uncertain fall. That's next.
From the brand with more 2020 IIHS Top Safety Awards than Honda or Toyota comes the Hyundai Tucson, which can help protect the ones you love and the ones they love. Feeling safe, it's better in a Hyundai Tucson.
Verizon knows how to build unlimited right. You start with the network J.D. Power is named the most awarded for network quality 25 times in a row.
This network is one less thing I have to worry about.
Then give people more plans to mix and match, so you only pay for what you need.
That is so cool.
Include the best in entertainment and offer it all starting at $35 with the iPhone everyone wants. iPhone 11 Pro on us when you buy one, because everyone deserves the best. This is unlimited built right, only on Verizon.
Ta-da! Did you know Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need?
I should get a quote.
Do it.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Mornings were made for better things than rheumatoid arthritis. When considering another treatment, ask about Xeljanz, a pill for adults with moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis when methotrexate has not helped enough. Xeljanz can reduce pain, swelling, and further joint damage, even without methotrexate. Xeljanz can lower your ability to fight infections. Before and during treatment, your doctor should check for infections like TB and do blood tests. Tell your doctor if you've had hepatitis B or C, have flu-like symptoms, or are prone to infections. Serious, sometimes fatal infections, cancers, including lymphoma, and blood clots have happened. Taking a higher than recommended dose of Xeljanz for RA may increase risk of death. Tears in the stomach or intestines and serious allergic reactions have happened. Don't let another morning go by without asking your doctor about the pill first prescribed for RA more than 7 years ago. Xeljanz.
As a real estate agent, I've learned it's excess moisture that causes the musty odors. Pro tip, use Damprid.
Damprid drop-in tabs attract and trap excess moisture out of the air, eliminating musty odors.
Works every time.
Get rid of dampness.
From the brand with more 2020 IIHS Top Safety Awards than Honda or Toyota comes the Hyundai Tucson, which can help protect the ones you love and the ones they love.